try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Two middle-aged guys try to work it all out. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Two Middle-Aged Guys Trying to Work It All Out. And we may sound a little bit different today because we are T-Mag Mobile Studio today, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the road because here we have a special guest. Introduce yourself, special guest.
Hi, I'm special guest.
Is that your legal name?
That's what I saw on the birth certificate.
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. But most people just call me Anthony from the Retro Gamers podcast.
There it is. And then who else is with me today?
That would be me, not special and not a guest, but very happy to be here with our good friend Anthony. Not often do you get to meet someone that you interact with just online, right? It doesn't feel like in the real world you get to meet these folks very often.
And if I can qualify that a little bit, when he says interact with each other online, none of us are paying to interact with each other
right.
online.
No, this is just yeah. Just I harassed the Retro Gamers podcast, and our lawyers did the initial sort of back and forth. But it started to get expensive. We decided to try to make it a bit more civil, and we became friends from that process.
That we did.
Legally speaking, we're friends.
Legally speaking, I remember signing the paperwork. Yes.
Because I just have to stay, 100 feet away. We are,
But I'm allowing it today because I'm here in person. And how often am I here with you violating my space?
Right. I will be taken to jail immediately when we're done recording, when you revoke that. And just as a little fun.
Well, I do have the police on speed dial.
Yeah, that's fair. So welcome to the show. It's a thrill to have you in person. It's a thrill to be able to do this live in a room instead of over a Zoom call or whatever. So anyway, today we have a fun topic because Anthony is here locally. We thought we would talk about local video game stores that we remember as a kid. But before we do that, Dave, if I'm not mistaken, I think you have a question for us.
I do have a question. This doesn't have to necessarily be related to a local store, although it might end up being that way. But we were in the stores today. We took a little road trip and visited a couple of the St. Louis game stores, one of our malls here in the Midwest. And it just got me thinking about today you come in to a store with some items to trade, you get trade credit, and it's kind of just technical and clinical, and it's not like a real swap. But there was a time when your item would be brought in, you'd say, I want to trade this copy of Blades of Steel of that copy for Gunsmoke, right? Or however it was, right? There was a little bit more of an interaction, a little bit more of a haggle, which these days that doesn't happen. It just got me to thinking, whether it's with a game store or with a private party, do you guys have any trades from maybe your younger years that you remember maybe being particularly good or particularly bad? You wish you could take it back.
Okay. I would definitely say I don't have any particularly good ones. I think the only good ones that would have happened would have been between friends more than actually at a store. And in terms of trading for me, as a younger kid, that didn't necessarily happen very much. Again, because I grew up in Brooklyn, major city. Most of the stores around me were chains. There weren't local video game shops really weren't a thing yet because the video game industry was young when we were kids. We grew up as the video game industry developed. So it only really started to come around when Funko Land came into being, and that was more like mid to late 90s. So it was past my childhood per se. But even still, the concept of I can trade in my old games to get something else was exciting because it's like, oh, these are just sitting on a shelf. But did I ever make out in that? Was it ever fair? Absolutely not. Funko Land, Funko, as you know, if you don't know, Funko Land became GameStop. Yes. And we all know GameStop's reputation with trade-ins. That started all the way back with Funko Land in the 90s, and that has not changed, which is why GameStop is in trouble. So I remember trading stuff in for like nothing. It's like trading in 6 games to get 1 game and 1 used game at that.
Yeah.
So those are my memories of trading in games.
So it never really worked in your favor.
No, it never worked. No, it definitely never worked in my favor. No. Yeah.
I've got a story for this. And Dave, I think you know the story. I think I've told it before. Anthony, this will be new to you.
Right.
And you will probably blacklist me from ever being on the Retro Gamers podcast again.
Oh, that's awesome. That excites me.
At the end of this story.
I love it.
So the NES had just come out. I just gotten one. So this probably would have been like 1998 or 1988 rather. And I had games and I loved Super Mario Brothers and I was totally in on this Nintendo thing. It was my absolute favorite thing. And there was a commercial for a game called Metroid. And I was like, oh, this game looks amazing. I can't, I've got it. And we went to the store and you never could find it. Like, it was really hard to find a copy of Metroid when it first came out.
Spoiler alert, Samus is a woman.
I've heard that
Have
before.
You?
Yeah.
Oh.
So
it's
funny.
almost as if we had recently talked about video game twists
I
or something.
I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, so my parents and I were out of town on like a little weekend trip or something like that. And we stopped at a Toys R Us and they had a copy of Metroid. I was like, oh my gosh, my parents knew I'd been looking for this game forever, and so they were like, okay, we're gonna buy it for the child. So I got it home and I was way too young for Metroid. Like, I could not wrap my brain around this game, and I was like, I don't understand, what do you mean I have to go left? Like, I couldn't handle it. So I decided, this game's not for me, I'm gonna trade it. And I went to a local pawn shop because in our area, that was how video game stores like started developing, was pawn shops first, and then they branched out. Went to a pawn shop, and the guy, Nintendo was like a big enough thing that he knew what Metroid was. He was like, oh my God. He was like, you really want to trade this? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, I'll tell you what, you can have any game in the store. I'll trade you straight out any game in the store.
And usually it was 2 for 1.
Usually it was 2 for 1.
Which is still a pretty darn good deal.
Sure, absolutely. Not complaining. But he's like, any game in the store. And I was like, I am king of the world. And I walked out of that store with Black Label Baseball.
Oh my goodness.
That's it? You didn't get 2?
No.
You walked out with Black Label Baseball.
And I was like, this is what I want. I'm happy. And with no shade on Black Label Baseball, but trading Metroid for that in 1988, I deserve some retribution for that.
Well, you deserve retribution for that, but I'm also in awe of the fact that as a child you were able to go into a pawn shop.
Oh yeah. So, it is Southwest Missouri. Like that,
okay,
that's not strange at all. I don't even think my parents were there.
All the dirty videos were in the back. Just to be clear,
we couldn't pass the curtain.
You couldn't pass the curtain.
All right, fair enough. But no, that is an unforgivable action. It really is an unforgivable action. So
I don't know why I tell that story, but
you tell that story because you have to marvel at the sheer stupidity. Or you know what? Let's change that. The sheer naivete that a child has when they're just thinking, a game for a game is an even swap.
Yeah.
So it was not. It was dumb.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And that guy, he was like, I'm going all the way to the bank with this one.
That's right. But you learned your lesson.
I did learn my lesson. That lesson was either A, never to trade again, or to just give Dave my games and tell him what I wanted and let him do the legwork.
The haggling.
Yeah.
There you go. Dave's the haggler in the group.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I am. In fairness, though, Black Label Baseball, for your age, probably got more playtime than Metroid was at that particular moment.
That's probably fair. Fair.
Black Label Baseball is pretty fun. I'm just being,
Yeah, so then from that perspective, it was a fair trade.
I
won't
not
let you
really.
slide for it. But from that perspective, it was a fair trade because you played it more than you would have Metroid.
I did. That's true. But I, looking back on it, I can see the ridiculousness of that deal.
Yes. But you know what? As kids, we all make ridiculous moves like that. So this
is like a therapy session, guys.
Thank you. A little bit. Yeah,
let it all
catharsis.
Appreciate that.
Let the tears flow.
I'll throw mine in real quick because that's the only reason why I ask questions is so I could give my own answer.
Exactly. Samus hates you, by the way.
Yeah, that's the male Samus that we all know is a man in that game.
No, the female Samus. You have.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Yes.
So. Chris was with me through this, and I've told this story in the podcast once, I think, certainly during our TurboGrafx 16 episode in the very early days of the podcast I did. But Chris and I, as the TurboGrafx, it was gasping its final breaths and was marked down to, I think it was 50 for the system, Chris, at Toys R Us. I think it was, I was trying to remember how much it was. I think it was 50, and we both had saved up enough money to go buy these new video game systems, explaining to our parents what we wanted and why we wanted it and what a TurboGrafx was. And we truly did not even know why we wanted it, other than we had been walking by these cases for years at Toys R Us and seeing this, and we did not know anyone who actually actually had TurboGrafx. We'd only really experienced the games, walking past it and seeing maybe a demo on a screen or in Game Pro magazine, right? Reading about it. So it was, or EGM. So it was this mysterious thing that we could afford to purchase. It came with the game, Keith Courage. And we bought it and we're like, oh, this is awesome. We got Keith Courage. We got our TurboGrafx. We decided on the way home, let's stop at a local video game / comic book store, which at the time was called Caveman and later became Vintage Stock, one of the stores, Anthony, with today with you. Yeah. And I don't remember exactly what I had to trade, but I think it was a couple of NES games. And I brought them up and I said, I'd like to trade these, and they do the normal value thing. And he said, this is what I'm thinking in trade, value. And I said, well, he goes, what are you interested in? I said, I'm interested. We just bought TurboGrafx. I'm interested in TurboGrafx games. And he goes, oh, really? He goes, well, we've got a handful of them over there on the shelf. I tell you what, if you want them, you can just take them all for these 2 Nintendo games. I think there was, Chris, 9 games?
Yeah,
8 games, 9?
Something like that. We split it up.
We split it up. We kind of pooled it and split it up. I would say Legendary Axe was one of them. Dragon Spirit was one of them.
Dragon's Curse
was one of them. Yeah, because Dragon Spirit was the flying game, or the dragon maybe, and Dragon's Curse. There was a few others, but we left, and not only did we have our TurboGrafx, not only did we have Keith Courage, but now we had a bunch of other games, and it made that next year with our TurboGrafx just sweet. It was so cool, and I could truly say in terms of trading, they just wanted to get rid of them. And like, wow, this is a great deal. They weren't selling, they weren't moving them. No one owned them in the area. We also ended up, I think, with a few Turbo CD games.
We did.
In there. We had nothing we could do with them, but they just tossed them in because they didn't care.
And now they're like $500
right,
games.
They're the North American Turbo CD expensive,
incredibly rare.
But we did quite well on that deal. I just remember that as a fun trading experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys taught me a powerful lesson of you should go to pawn shops as a child.
As a child. And if you have little kids,
games.
Bring your little kids in. They will offer you money for your kids potentially on consignment, but you'll have to do chores around the pawn shop.
Of course.
That's reasonable.
I want you to sweep up all my bullet casings, please, here at the pawn shop.
Well, I figure you put them in a little bin and you sell them for like, a nickel a piece or something.
And the kid gets a little older, they can reload the shells. So there you go. Yeah.
There you go. They learn a skill.
Sounds like a win-win for everybody. Yeah.
I just thought that was fun. All of it, I think our stories had some connection to local game stores. But we thought we'd just share, if we could, a game store memory, maybe a particular game store that we love to go, whether it be local or part of a big chain, that we just have really fond memories of. So as our guest, Anthony, would you please go first?
Sure. I'm going to give you 2, though.
All right.
If that's okay. The first one, it's not going to be a long one to talk about. It's the good memory one, and it is going to be a chain. But there was a Toys R Us 10 minutes away from my house. So as a kid...
Is that the one on Flatbush?
That was the one on Flatbush Avenue.
Okay, I just remember hearing that from your show when you guys were talking about it. I don't know.
Good memory. Yeah. Good memory. Flatbush Avenue, that's where we would always go. And that was just the place closest to us. So that was where I bought all of my video games as a kid. So we would always run over there when I wanted anything. And just the Toys R Us experience, I don't think anybody today can really like equate what that experience was like. Going to the store, seeing all of the games just plastered on the wall, images of the games plastered on the wall. You just got your pick. And they have the covers, and you can read the back to read what the game is about, so you can figure out which one you want. So you didn't always necessarily go there knowing what you were going to get. You went there knowing you were going to get a game, maybe. It's your birthday, whatever it is. Or you're going there because your mom or dad is shopping, and now you get to plan what you're going to ask for later. Yep. I want this one for my birthday. For Christmas, I'm going to ask for this one, and so on and so forth. So you got to do all this stuff. But the fact that there was just a wall, just a flat-out wall full of these games, and then obviously underneath it, the iconic paper slips that when you knew a game was in stock because it had a bunch of paper slips underneath, and you had to take the paper slip to the register, pay for the game, and then go to the window where an attendant was waiting to go into the back area to take your game off of the warehouse shelf. I still think back to those days of getting games that way as like some of my fondest memories, because it was just the whole process of it. It was just the emotion, the anticipation, all of that stuff, to when it was finally in your hand. And then you're sitting in your car reading it all the way home, and you cannot wait to get that game in your Nintendo. And then at that point, it was probably 50-50 if the game was even good.
And when you described it, multiple steps, right?
Yes.
You're pulling you're doing the browsing, making your selection, pulling the card, hoping that the counts are right, and that there is the game back there going, getting the game. I think you paid for it first, then you went and picked it up at the multiple steps. But that wasn't an inconvenience. That was an experience. It was all like building up. That was such a magical experience at that time that this generation that we're a part of, we got to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, now it's just, clicking and getting the delivery from Amazon.
It's in my Amazon cart, and I have overnight delivery because I have Prime.
Yeah.
Or click, it's downloaded.
Yeah.
Yep. And there's good to both of them, but I loved that process. It built up to this event, right? The experience of the purchase to the event of putting it into your NES. So much fun.
It was amazing.
Some of my favorite childhood memories is that wall of games on Toys R Us and getting it. And when I would take the slip up to the window and they'd open it for just that brief moment, and you could see all the games.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many like Ocean's 11 style heists I was planning in my brain. It was like, could I get in here after hours?
Hanging down from the drop down ceiling, suspended like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible.
Yeah, and I was just saying, we're kids too, because it's like, is there like a hole somewhere that I can just kind of squeeze my way through? I can just get in here, no problem.
I just would have liked to went there and looked around to see maybe you've got like secret cool stuff that I don't know that's not out.
Well, they did. It was Toys R Us. They had all the toys back there, all the toys. But yeah, Toys R Us is always going to be my go-to experience as a kid for a local store. The other one that came to mind, which I just have to bring up because I rarely ever bring it up on my show, but because it's one of those memories that sometimes I remember it and sometimes I just don't. But there was a local toy store called Red's. That was the name of it. It was literally like a brick building, looked like a warehouse. It had a big sign on the front that said Red's. And I remember like you had to go there. Like you would drive down this street. I remember there's like a bowling alley on the corner, and then you drive past it. It's almost like you drive through this fence. It almost looked like you were going into like some type of like a train yard or something like that. That's kind of how it looked like with these metal fences and stuff. And you pull into the parking lot. Parking lot was not paved over. It was just all gravel or whatever it was, or rocks and stuff like that. Park and go inside. And then when you went into the store, if you want to call it a store, like there were some shelves with stuff, but everywhere you looked, boxes, stacks and stacks of boxes that just went on forever. And Red, who owned the store, was this very old, not very old, there was an older man, very grumpy. And you would go to this store to find what you could not find anywhere else. If Toys R Us didn't have it, if Sears didn't have it, if name your chain store didn't have it, you go to Red's. That's where you would find it. Because he was always the last person people would go to. And not only that, he would always keep his stock, like literally his stock would just sit there in boxes forever. I used to go there a lot when I couldn't find a wrestling figure when I was a kid. He had every wrestling figure. So if we couldn't find it, so I just went there. But sometimes we'd go for video games. So you walk in and you're looking around, or you just flat up, you go up and ask him. He didn't have anybody else there. It was just him. He ran this one thing. So it's like, if there were 20 people in the store, you're waiting a very long time to talk to this man. And he was not fun to talk to at all. It was almost like he was insulted that people were coming in there to spend their money for him, for him to make a profit. He always acted that way. And when you would ask for something, it's like, hey, do you have a copy of Metroid on NES? He would grumble, and then he would just like shift around into his maze of boxes, and then you hear him rustling around, and then he comes out with what you're looking for. All right, fine. No price tag on it. How much? Literally would just make up a number.
He was like on the forefront of dynamic pricing.
Yeah. Oh no, he absolutely was. Like, how much? And he would just literally say a number. And it was never the number that you would get in another store. It was always higher. So, because he knew what people were coming there for. Like, we can't find this anywhere else, so fine, you're going to pay me more for it. But if you were that desperate to get it for your kid, you would spend the money. And I remember going to that store, not often, but as like in these experiences, not just for me, for like my sister, my cousins. I remember once in the 90s, probably one of the last times I went there, when Power Rangers was new, and they were huge. And that was the Christmas toy of that year. My nephew, who was a kid he was like 7 or 8, loved the Power Rangers. He wanted all of them for Christmas. My aunt found all of them except the pink one. And the only place left to go to was Red's. And we went to Red's, and I watched my mother and my aunt fighting with Red over this pink Power Ranger because he wanted like $100-something for it.
Wow.
Goodness.
He just threw out, he's like, I want $120 for it. And they were just yelling at him, trying to get him to bring the price down. That was that was the one time where we just walked out without it. We were like, nope, you're crazy. But that local store, I will always remember that store. I'm sure that guy is long gone.
They were seeing red after going to Red's.
And you know what? That was
dad joke.
that was a commercial.
Yeah, that should have been. Yeah.
Yep. You want to see red? Go to Red's.
Bring extra green.
That's right. Bring extra green because you'll be seeing red.
Very color-based marketing.
And very basic colors too. Primary.
True.
Very primary. But yeah, that was my Reds experiences, which I still think of fondly, even though they were wild.
Toys R Us is more fun than Red's. I think I'll just
way
say
more fun
that.
than Toys R Us.
I'm going to hazard a guess.
Toys R Us was like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory for video games.
It really at a specific
all the
time.
Stages.
Yeah.
Through all the stages.
Looking at the systems, even if you weren't going to buy a system, just the experience now, and I'm sure I've magnified it in my memory, but it was like museum pieces almost.
Totally.
The way they had them set out. And it was like, oh, wow, I'd love to go back and experience that.
And the displays where you used to play the games too, where, they would have them set up so you can try out certain games. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was definitely a special time.
Yes.
It was.
All right. You or me?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm going to do something that we rarely do on this show, and I'm going to pull back the curtain of podcasting. Because Dave and I, we settle on what the topic's going to be. We go off, we do our prep. We don't share our prep with each other because we want to keep it spontaneous, keep it lively. And so part of the prep for this episode was 2 experiences, and Dave stole my experience with the TurboGrafx 16 caveman story. So I'm only going to have one more that I can add to the conversation, but that's okay because it's a good one. We had a series of game shops in Springfield called Game Exchange. And it's a chain that still exists in parts of the country.
Of that. Yes.
Yeah, they're more south and more east now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been to one.
Yeah, they do still exist. They are, in my opinion, not as nice as they once were because they've kind of become just a dumping ground for everything. There's not a lot of organization to them. But if you're willing to spend 6 hours in there digging through piles of stuff, you can still find amazing things at a game exchange. So if you see one, it's absolutely worth stopping. We had a couple of game exchanges in Springfield, and they were fantastic. I mean, they were by far, for a very long time, the number one place to do video games. This is after Toys R Us had shut down, unfortunately. So we were more limited in what we could choose. And Game Exchange was great. They did new games. They did used games. They did everything. All systems, anything you can imagine, you would find at a Game Exchange. So I went in there one day, and there was a very specific game I was looking for, and that is Wild Arms on the PS1. Which is a fantastic RPG.
Yep.
Love that game dearly, and was going from store to store to store trying to find a copy of it. They did not have a used copy, but they had a brand new copy. And I was like, I was really hoping to save a few bucks on used. Okay, fine, give me the brand new one. So I paid for it, went out to my car, tore the wrapping off of it, opened it, and there was no disc in it. It was just an empty, sealed, brand new case. So I was like, this is terrible. So I went back in and I said, hey, I know this is how this is going to sound, but I just bought this from you. I opened it up. There was no disc in it. She was like, oh, no problem. Sorry, I forgot to put that in. And she goes to the back, and immediately she stops and turns around. She's like, that was a brand new game. I was like, yeah, you didn't. I was like, there must have been some kind of factory mix up. I don't know what happened. She believed me. She gave me a refund And she didn't have to do it because, like, you know, I'm a 17-year-old snot-nosed kid that's coming in here. I went out to my car, opened it, and then went back in. But that is absolutely a true story. That is what happened. The game was not in the case, and she thought about. You could tell that like the gears were turning in her mind. But finally, she's like, "Okay, I'll refund you." And so, if that lady's listening to this show now, kudos to you, ma'am. That was an honest transaction and some kind of weird factory mistake. And it took me forever to find a copy of Wild Arms. I don't know why, but that game eluded me for many, many, many years.
I was going to say, the story would have ended differently had you gone home and opened it, because you would have been going back like an hour later.
Yeah.
And then she would have been like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
All right, kid.
That was a lot of circumstances that worked out just perfectly that I did not lose $40 or $50 or whatever it was. So I loved Game Exchange. Did a lot of business there. You know, I was not a stranger. So that may have helped me out a little bit there as well. But excellent store, excellent customer service experience, and I wish they were still around in Springfield.
Yeah, I have a family in Oklahoma who mentioned that they have one near them, and I was like, they're still around. And I also remember they were very careful with their branding because it was a franchise, it was a brand, and any other store that used Exchange, whether it be with an E or with an X, and they told me there was very specific branding guidelines. They would go, and the parent company would take steps to shut them down because there was one that opened up, and I don't remember, but it had the word exchange in it, and it altered the spelling, but it was trying to ride on the coattails of Game Exchange, and they got them to change their name. I think that was the one that was in Joplin, Missouri, that had to be changed. It wasn't a proper Game Exchange, so it's fascinating. But I definitely have fond memories of that store and the many trades that I did in building up. I remember through them, I did a lot of trades at a time when it was Sega Saturn games were really inexpensive. I built up a great library of Sega Saturn games there because they would do great sales and trades. It was a great store.
Yeah, it was. It really was. So that's the only one I had. We can just rewind and listen to the Caveman TurboGrafx story again if you want to. But there we go.
What's the rewind? Okay. I'll throw a slightly different vibe of store out, but still, I have great memories of this because there was in the little town Chris and I were from. Chris and I went to this store occasionally, a computer store that would also sell games, and they sold used games on consignment. So folks would bring their games in, they'd put it out, they would sell it for the owner, and the owner would get 80% of the cut. The computer store, which is still there, so I won't say the name of it, but it was a family-run business, and they would take the 20%, and you could go and find good deals on otherwise expensive games, and it was a great way to get computer games at a time when it was during the transition from 3.5 diskette to CD-ROM. So there'd be a mix of both, right? There would be diskette-based games and CD-ROM-based games for the PC, and they had, Greg said, great prices. Not a huge selection, but you could find good stuff out there. I believe that's where we picked up Out of This World for the PC. I'm thinking maybe that could have been at Babbage's. But I think we picked that one up there. But it was always just fun to look because even though the selection was small, it was just, there was interesting things there that you would not see. And they did not have like dirt cheap, like what we would call shovelware type games. Right. It was always pretty good stuff.
Well, and the idea of a secondhand PC game market was very rare. You did not see that very often.
You did not. And so I just, the uniqueness of it, the setting, which was a lot of computer stuff sold by really smart, capable individuals, but they had you'd go in there and everybody else was there in business attire and buying, important things for their business. And there's two kids coming in looking at the computer games. Just kind of a weird setting, but it was neat. Different selection, different business model. I mean, consignment games. I have not heard of it since. I'm pretty sure I hadn't heard of it up until that point either. I mean, that usually is more of jewelry and fur and luxury items where you see consignment.
Yeah.
And I did wear a lot of fur at the time as an 11-year-old boy.
I talked to you about that.
Fur. Yeah,
I mean, but
boy.
whatever.
Yeah, if you wanted me to go synthetic,
Hey.
you would throw red paint on me.
I was gonna say, to each his own. If you wanted to be a furry at 11, this is
But it was really cool. But I do remember that I brought a game in to sell on consignment, and I forgot about it. And this store's still there, and I often wonder, it's still in the same location, if they still have a consignment section with one game covered in cobwebs.
Just sitting there.
And I don't remember what it was. It could be something like Flashback or TIE Fighter versus X-Wing or something, right?
You know what it is? It's like a $500 TurboGrafx CD game. That's what's sitting there.
They only took PC games,
and
console stuff.
And they can't close because they're waiting for you to come
Right,
in
they
That's
can't
why
close
so
they're
that they
still
can
open.
pay out the consignment.
The double entry accounting system will not allow them to zero out this transaction. And the family business continues to run day after day. They bring themselves into a store. They want to retire.
Just waiting for this guy named Dave to show up.
So anyways, that is what certainly wasn't the most important. It certainly wasn't the most memorable, but it may be the most unusual game store experience that I can recall. Other than maybe being thrown out of the pawn store because shop, because there was a time, you mentioned as kids going in, there was a time when the pawn shop stopped allowing us to trade games. And I think that it was because we were too young. And even when our parents would come in and try to assist us, there was
I'm not convinced that it was like a kid policy change. I think it was just you and me.
I think it was just you and me and that one crazy dude who had this Michael Bolton hair.
Yeah.
It was dark colored Michael Bolton hair. Always wearing a T-shirt with his "We Carry Guns" was on the front of the pawn shop. So he would try to rob her with a big pistol on his shoulder holster, just waiting for a Matrix style gunfight to break out. And but we were asked to stop coming into that store.
Well, that's not cool.
Yeah, but it's and now those experiences. I mean, I still do go into game stores. I had a great experience today that will go into my memory as a great time in stores that sold games. But it's just you don't get those very often anymore. Now I will occasionally, when I'm in Walmart, walk through the game aisle and just see what's on sale on clearance, and sometimes I find a great deal. But most of it's done online. So, it's just refreshing to get to experience that like we did today, or to talk about those wonderful memories.
Yeah. And there's still something about it. And it's one of the reasons why, and not just for the podcast that I have, because now I'm just flat out a video game collector. Even if I wasn't doing my podcast, I would still be collecting video games. But going to these stores that are reselling all of these old games, it brings back that nostalgia.
Absolutely.
It brings back that feeling, especially now because these games have they've been released 30, 40 years, right? And now it's the hunt of finding the one you're looking for. Like I mentioned when we were at the store, like I was looking for one or two specific ones that they didn't have. And this was probably the third or fourth store I visited where I've had a couple of games in my head that I'm looking for that are just not there. Could I go online and find them? Sure. I was like, but there's something fun about the hunt. And so everywhere I go, whenever I'm traveling, I always want to hit up a video game store because I love the hunt. I love to find something that I know I want, and the joy of seeing it sitting there and knowing that
in person,
yes, I can grab it with my hand and I can go, because that was the whole fun of it as a kid. Granted, the store had them in stock, but it was the whole going to the store, picking out the game you wanted and getting it. You can still have that experience with these types of stores.
Yep. And now when you want something that's a little bit harder to find, sure, Mercari, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, you can hit those, Google Shop, that takes 10 minutes. There is no search. There is no, finding that the hidden treasure and experiencing it out in the wild. Feel like you accomplished something. You're just letting the computer do the work for you. It takes kind of the fun out of it when experience that going and finding it, man, that's a big part of it.
Yeah, like 10 Pin Alley that I picked up today on PlayStation. Like I grabbed that because like a wash of memories just went straight through my head when I saw that game sitting there. And I'm like, you know what? I do need this in my collection again. just for that reason.
Yeah.
Well, so this was just a quick episode of our show. We
Was it?
Could not. We could not let an
We've
opportunity.
crossed a half hour. So.
Yeah, with Anthony go by without recording something. The Retro Gamers were and are a huge part of what we and Chris do on this, of what Chris and I do on the show. I refer to Chris as multiple people because you guys helped inspire us, and Anthony, you and Larry both. It's interesting, you go from listening to you guys while I was doing yard work to meeting up with you all virtually to now meeting you in person and becoming real friends from this experience. So thank you for all the support you've given us. Thank you for just being just a great friend to us as we built up the podcast and this opportunity to meet you in person.
Well, I really appreciate all of that, and honestly, I appreciate both of your friendships. I think this is one of those situations where, it's one of those things where it's like we were meant to meet under some type of circumstances because of the similarities we have, regardless of the fact that we live 1,000 miles away from each other. It doesn't necessarily matter, and I'm always very grateful for how highly you speak of myself, of Larry, of the Retro Gamers podcast, and we're very grateful that we did have some type of influence on you. But honestly, you guys influenced us just as much too, because I'll speak for myself, not for Larry because he's not here, but I love your podcast. I love what you guys talk about. I love hearing the stories of your friendships grow, all the experiences you guys had growing up. It's just a great nostalgic story that I hear from you guys every single episode. And I always can't wait to hear the next one. So thank you for being so awesome.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
I mean, really,
That's all you need to say. See,
Thank you.
Chris isn't humble at all, is he?
So tell our listeners where they can find you.
You guys can find the Retro Gamers podcast wherever you listen to podcasts on Apple Music, on Spotify. You can watch us on YouTube and on Spotify at Retro Gamers Podcast. You can also find us on Facebook, on Blue Sky, on Instagram, on TikTok at the Retro Gamers Podcast. And you can email us if you want to reach out and talk gaming at email@theretrogamers.com.
And you can find us, Dave and myself, at 2middleagedguys.com. That is 2 middleagedguys.com. From that website, you can find our socials, which may be expanding.
Should I take my social security number down?
No.
Okay.
I just told people they can find it there, so let's leave it.
I'm going to leave it there.
But we may expand our socials. Anthony and we were just having a conversation about TikTok and what T-Mac could do on TikTok. So, hey, you never know. Us middle-aged men might be the newfangled thing that your young children are watching. And if that's the case, I sincerely apologize.
Well, actually, you know what? This may be an actual strategy on our parts to take TikTok down. Yes. We're going to flood TikTok with middle-aged guys.
Yes. People are like, we didn't want that at all. That is not what we signed up for. But anyway, go to our website, find all of the things that we do. Go to Retro Gamers, find out all the things that Anthony does. He's really making an incredible show there. If you like our show, you're going to like his show. If you like his show, you're going to like our show. I think that's fair to say.
More than fair.
All right. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will catch you next episode.